27 as 86 new cases are reported.
NCDC and WHO teams visit states to ascertain response levels in the fight against COVID-19.
Our role is to encourage, support every state in preparing. The success of NCDC together with WHO is, are we serving the states optimally?
President Buhari condemns latest attacks by bandits in Katsina State.
And on Good Morning Nigeria today, we shall discuss COVID-19 lockdown and crime wave.
Today is day 7 of the extended 2-week lockdown of Lagos and Ogun states, as well as the Federal Capital Territory, and exactly 21 days into the 4 weeks of lockdown so far.
That's right, Kirian, and it is natural to expect that many homes in the last 21 days would have been, as it were, running out of groceries and food supplies, which were stockpiled with panic buying as soon as President Muhammadu Buhari announced the lockdown of the 3 locations you mentioned earlier, namely Lagos, Ogun, and the Federal Capital Territory.
Precisely, and the president described the decision to lock down as painful but necessary, and accordingly directed the distribution of various forms of palliatives for the poor and vulnerable, including the release of 70,000 tons of grains from the Strategic National Grain Reserve to cushion the effects of the lockdown on poor Nigerians.
Well, Kira, we do not know how far-reaching these palliatives have gone to the poorest of the poor using the National Social Register. But reports emanating from Lagos and Ogun in the last 2 weeks would tend to indicate that boys, as it were, are not smiling, and some of them are taken to crime to survive. And this certainly puts the nation in double jeopardy of trying to contain COVID-19 on the one hand and rising criminality on the other.
Indeed, double jeopardy. Of course, Kinsley, you know, when you say the boys are not smiling, we saw videos on social media of some idle youths holding machetes on the streets in Lagos, and there were reports of neighborhood robbery, including looting of shops by street urchins and hoodlums, which are crude and unlawful means of surviving the biting effects of the ongoing lockdown.
Now, the Inspector General of Police, Muhammadu Adamu, has responded to the distress calls of insecurity from Lagos and Ogun by dispatching what he called an intervention force led by a Deputy Inspector General of Police. And the aim, of course, is to strengthen security and bolster public confidence in the affected areas.
And the commissioners of police in all 36 states and the Federal Capital Territory, as well as all assistant inspectors general of police in the zonal commands, were instructed by the IGP to deploy all resources at their disposal to quell any form of criminality that could compound the pains already being experienced by Nigerians as a result of the restriction order.
Well, recall too, Kirian, that the IGP had earlier warned, that's before the lockdown, that cybercrime and fraud might increase. Now, specifically, he had said that intelligence obtained from the Interpol headquarters showed that scammers in different parts of the world, including Nigeria, had begun to create and set up fraudulent websites, e-commerce platforms, fake social media accounts, and emails claiming to sell and deliver COVID-19 medical products.
And the last time we had the police spokesperson, he did mention some of these, you know, and he was almost begging criminals, you know, to stay back for now. Well, you are correct, Kingsley, and some of us have been receiving calls requesting one to join a WhatsApp group, chat, and even text messages asking you to click on some phantom internet link to get some form of financial palliative. All these fraudulent schemes have increased in recent times, especially as Nigerians are now glued to their mobile phones for information during this lockdown season.
Well, there are many questions to pose, and that will also include just how well the security agencies are responding to these latest threats, not just the ones through the e-platforms, but more particularly the lawlessness that have been reported in parts of Lagos and Ogun states, including, Kirian, you saw the videos of the so-called 1 million boys who are armed in broad daylight, disregarding all kinds of social distancing requirements and attacking neighborhoods day and night. And just as it's heard, how well are the security agencies responding to this? What more is also required to be done? These are some of the questions, of course, we shall be posing to our guests in our conversation segment on Good Morning Nigeria today.
Pertinent questions there, Kingsley, and we shall engage our guests with these questions and more as we discuss the lockdown and crime on Good Morning Nigeria today. Welcome to the program. My name is Kirian Umayo.
And I'm Kingsley Osadolo. I joined my colleague Kiria to also welcome you to the program. We are reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. And from the nation's capital, Abuja, that's where we are broadcasting from. My colleague now, that's Habiba Oladipo, has the highlights of the morning news. Habiba, good morning. And let's have the news.
Good morning, Kingsley and Karen. Here's the news. As at 19th of April 2020, the Nigerian Center for Disease Control, NCDC, announced 86 new cases of COVID-19 across the country, bringing the number of confirmed cases to 627. Of the 86 new cases, 70 are in Lagos, 7 in the FCT, 3 in Katsina, 3 in Akwa Ibom, 1 in Jigawa, 1 in Bauchi, and 1 in Borno. 170 patients have been discharged so far, and the death toll has risen to 21. More than 1,070 people with COVID-19 symptoms and 3 confirmed cases have been discovered in Lagos through the house-to-house search. Commissioner for Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, who discloses at an update briefing on the pandemic, emphasized that community transmission is on the increase.
The red line demonstrates what would have happened if we had not deployed any of the strategies. By now, we would have been seeing about 6,000 cases. But as a result of our strategies, and that reflects the blue line, you can see, despite the fact that we seem to be seeing more cases on a daily basis, we are really in a position where our strategies in Lagos State have indeed dramatically reduced the number of cases that we would have seen.
The Director General of the Nigerian Center for Disease Control and the World Health Organization team are in Delta State to ascertain the level of response of the state towards the fight against COVID-19 and further strategize with the state government on possible ways of achieving more progress.
Almost every country in the world now has at least one confirmed case of COVID-19. So we have to work on the same assumption in Nigeria. Our role is to encourage, support every state in preparing. The success of NCDC together with WHO is, are we serving the states optimally? Until we demonstrate that we can do that, we won't succeed.
NCDC has a very clear guideline in place, a clear strategy for ramping up testing. And as WHO, we are here to support NCDC to ensure that what is recommended globally, we contextualize it to the country level.
Prominent Nigerians have continued to register their condolences to the federal government in honor of the late Chief of Staff to the President, Malam Abba Kyari. The organized labor in a statement signed by its Vice President, Industrial Global Union, Comrade Issa Aremu, described late Abba Kyari as a key player in the oil and gas sector, having served on the board of the NNPC and ExxonMobil. International Press Institute described him as an astute public servant. Similarly, the leadership of the grassroots mobilizer for Buhari says the absence of Malam Abba Kyari will be greatly felt. Meanwhile, the All Farmers Association of Nigeria says the association has lost a partner in agriculture. And the Minister of Science and Technology described the late Chief of Staff as a gentleman dedicated to work and who exhibited mutual respect. The people of Adamawa State have continued to commend the federal government, individuals and corporate bodies for providing palliative materials to cushion the effect of the current lockdown in an effort to contain the spread of the deadly COVID-19. This came to the fore during sharing of food items by Senator representing Adamawa Central, Aisha Dahiru Ahmed Binani.
People are not going to work, people are not going to their business places. Seriously, and she assists us with relief material, and we thank her.
And residents of Abuja Area Council in the nation's capital have received the federal government's COVID-19 lockdown palliatives following the flag off by the Minister of State, FCT, Ramutu Tijani Aliyu.
As we dey indoor, no food, nothing, and God just sent them to bring food for us today. I really appreciate them.
When this is served, hopefully, we pray to God that the pandemic does not last for too long, but we will be back again, for we have in store what we still go around again and again.
On security matters, President Muhammadu Buhari has condemned the latest attacks by bandits in Katsina State in 3 local government areas that left 47 persons dead. Senior Special Assistant to the President on Media and Publicity, Garba Shehu, in a statement said the president, reacting to the incident on Sunday, said he is deeply saddened by the latest developments and called on Nigerians not to despair because this administration is ever determined to defeat and crush this criminal element taking advantage of the lockdown to attack their victims. The president directed security agencies not to rest on their oars or lower their guards, which will create a vacuum for the bandits to strike. While extending his sympathies to the families of the victims, he called on the people to show more vigilance by reporting activities of criminal elements in their midst. In the meantime, troops of Operation Lafia Dole have killed more than 100 Boko Haram insurgents in the ongoing final onslaught against terrorist groups in the northeast Nigeria. And that's the morning news. The program continues with Kingsley and Kirian after this break.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. By washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
Let's go, guys.
Babe.
Yeah?
Would you please turn on your hotspot?
Okay, there you go. My lady. Play this ball. Hey, hold this guy down.
Password, please.
0808.
Baby girl, you are 1 in a million.
Babe.
Yeah.
You have a message.
From you, maybe? Read it out now. Read it out to my ears.
Nobody.
Free your mind with Airtel Smart Talk and enjoy calls to all networks at a flat rate of 11 kobo per second. Dial *315# to join.
Fine girl. Can I have your phone, man?
Airtel, the smartphone network.
stay at home. It's the responsible thing to do. And whilst you're taped, you can do anything to keep your body and your mind together. Grow a beard like me if you want to, but please, let's stay at home. It's the responsible thing to do.
Coronavirus is real. Steps to avoid this pandemic. Wash your hands regularly or sanitize your hands. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Stay at home unless absolutely necessary. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth if your hands are not clean. Avoid the spread of coronavirus. Coronavirus is real.
The main way coronavirus spread is when infected people sneeze and cough. Small droplets of fluid expelled by cough or sneezes are laced with viruses looking for new respiratory tracts to infect. When a sick person sneezes around someone who is healthy, the virus can land in the nose, mouth, or even the eyes, causing an infection. Symptoms can include fever, cough, shortness of breath. Symptoms may appear within 2 to 14 days. Seek medical advice if you develop symptoms and have been in close contact with a person known to have COVID-19, or if you live or have recently been in an area with ongoing spread of COVID-19. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest television network.
And if you just joined us, this is Good Morning Nigeria. It's now time to talk business. And let's bring in Kolo Mohammed.
Hello there. Good to have you along. COVID-19 has continually placed the globe on the trail of imperatives to contain it, slow down its spread, and eventually defeat it. On the other hand, however, experts are envisaging a new world economic order after COVID-19 as dependent countries are likely to become independent in terms of production, even though Nigeria is said to be at a fairly independent level in terms of production, manufacturing, and invention. As cars are now not only assembled in Nigeria but manufactured. Ventilators have also been manufactured, and the military's poise in technological advancement has attained commendable levels. Development experts say commercial banks may wish to gift loan beneficiaries moratorium to hand them ample lead time towards financial comfort zone as the globe battles COVID-19. And finally, the week's activity on the floor of the Nigerian Stock Exchange opens today. As always, NTA Business News will bring you closing figures subsequently. My name is Kolo Muhammad. It sure does pay to stay safe, observe lockdown, embrace stay home, and practice healthy plus thorough social distancing. Many thanks.
Thank you, Kolo Mohammed, for the business package. Next on the program is Newspaper Review.
Now let's welcome Bayo Toyebi, our newspaper reviewer. Bayo, it's good to have you again today.
Thank you, Kieran. Good morning. Good morning, Kinsley. Good morning.
Yes. All right. Let's start the review with the Daily Sun newspaper. Daily Sun on the right-hand side. We have Kyari's burial. Why 8 were turned back from Aso Rock, the presidency. With the rider Southwest Edo, Borno, Enugu, Yobe governors, IPI, IPAC, AAC, Arthur Eze, Mon, Kyari's death. The story is on pages 8 and 28 of the Daily Sun. Now, the lead story, COVID-19, anxiety over rising cases in Abuja. With 2 riders, scores of residents in villages test positive. Nurses, midwives lament shortage of protective equipment in Lagos. That's on page 6. Now, the photo story on the Daily Sun newspaper shows passengers in transit from Ondo to Osun State arrested by Amotekun operatives at the Ife-Tedo boundary for violating the lockdown order yesterday. Now, below that, we have a massacre in Katsina communities. Bandits kill 47 residents as Governor Masari imposes total lockdown on Metropolis. That's on page 4. Now, going down again, we have troops hit Boko Haram. ISWAP killed 10 in Yobe. It's captured on page 4. Kidnappers of Anglican priest fume over poor ransom negotiation. The story is on page 5. Now, community herders clash under control. That's according to Imo State government. The story is on pages 4 and 5. And of course, at the bottom of the Daily Sun, jubilation as Wike frees 22 oil workers. That's on page 2. Kinsley.
Okay, so we'll take a look at the Punch newspaper. Above the nameplate of the Punch, you have the following headlines. Petrol subsidy removal, a game changer. That's attributed to the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, with details at page 24. We killed 105 Boko Haram fighters in Yobe, according to the army, details on page 11. And on page 9, pray at home during Ramadan, Sultan tells Muslims. And bandits killed 47 Katsina villagers in multiple attacks, details on page 12. And then you can see an earpiece there beside the nameplate, the figures of COVID-19 in Nigeria, according to Punch newspaper, 21 dead now. This story for the paper says presidency bars ministers and other Kyari's burial attendees from Villa. With 3 riders, says Lagos yet to reach COVID-19 peak, and that's according to the Commissioner for Health. Tests for COVID-19. South Africa, you see the figure there, that's over 114,000. Ghana, nearly 61,000. Egypt, 55,000. And Nigeria, above 7,000. Coronavirus, we've started journey to recovery, says Adeboye. And the photograph on the front page of the paper says Pastor Danjuma of Rema House of Prayer and Answer Ministry. You can see him in white there during his arrest by the FCT task force for conducting a church service in Kubwa in Abuja yesterday, Sunday. Rivers releases oil workers and Penkinson suspends strike, page 14. Benue warns hoteliers against harboring sick people. It's page 12. WHO worker in Bauchi tests positive for coronavirus. Page 9. Nigeria and others need $114 billion to fight COVID-19, says IMF. 10 killed, 45 injured in Zamfara road crash. That's page 5. Rape threat. 67 women groups want El Rufai's son prosecuted. Details on page 14. Bayo.
Well, the death of Malam Abba Kyari, the chief of staff to the president, has dominated reports in the newspaper, particularly condolences from around the country. And they have come from former presidents, former heads of states, the vice president and his wife, former vice president and governors across the country. The nation was shocked by the news that broke on Friday about the fatality of coronavirus. Mr. President was the first among who that paid tribute. President Muhammadu Buhari described the death of Malam Abba Kyari, that my loyal friend and compatriot of 42 years has been lost. He never wavered in his commitment to the betterment of every one of us. His focus was on development, infrastructure, and assurances of security to our nation. The president declared that he served so faithfully, and I dare add that he was said to be very, very loyal. Governor Dev Umahi, in his tribute, thanked Malam Abba Kyari for the second Niger bridge. Minister for Foreign Affairs, who had been a friend with the late Malam Abba Kyari since their student days in 1977, says that he is a detribalized, a Pan-African, a Pan-Nigerianist who recognizes no boundaries between people, either race, ethnic, or religion. He described him as a person of class whose class was not obstructed by politics or any other matter. He makes friends with all. He says when he and Igbo man was married a Yoruba wife at Owo, Malam Abba Kyari was his best man. He was also the godfather of his son at baptism. But Mr. Oyema testified that he certainly was very sad about the impeachment of his integrity. He said Abba Kyari was absolutely incorruptible. So when he asked him about all these allegations, Abba Kyari says that, well, he is unperturbed and he is undeterred because he knows that it's a price that he has to pay for fighting corruption. He once told an editor friend that from his experience as editor, he could predict that all those stories about him were planted in newspapers. When COVID-19 broke in Wuhan, and later on the first index case appeared in Lagos, his concerns were that how many ICUs do we have? How quickly can we increase the number of if the virus were to get here? And how many health workers do we have? How soon can we increase the number to cope with it? Ironically, he fell to the same coronavirus. He was also known to have been a very silent philanthropist. He had hundreds of orphans under his payroll that he was paying for. In all, he was said to be a gentleman and a technocrat that Nigeria has lost. Meanwhile, the presidency has advised State House personnel and reporters that attended the funeral prayers and the burial to withdraw from work in the next 14 days. They are advised to work from home. This was in a statement issued by Deputy Director of Information, Atta Essa. And consequently, this is to follow the NCDC and the Ministry of Health guidelines and rules. Already, there are speculations about who is to succeed. But the Chief of Staff to the President is indeed the first among equals of all appointees of the President. His job mainly is to manage the correspondence of Mr. President and the Commander-in-Chief and also schedule his correspondences. It is a duty that he devoted all his life for. Now, the latest on coronavirus. There is concern from the reports coming from the Nigerian Center for Disease Control. Thank you very much. Friday, we had 51 cases. Saturday, 49. On Sunday evening, 48 cases was recorded at 9 p.m. By 11 p.m., it had increased to 86. Consequently, between Friday and now, we have had 186 cases. That so far, coronavirus has spread to 21 states. Jigawa and Adamawa states that were not on the list before have now joined the queue. So the danger now is that we need to be very, very careful. Worldwide, the coronavirus incidences has affected 2,363,000 cases in 193 countries. So far, United States has the highest of 742,000. Italy is second. And for us in Nigeria, we need to be very concerned because already over the weekend, there are instances of vehicles moving across the country. Some people who had traveled all the way from Lagos were stopped somewhere in Niger. Another group were stopped in a truck that was camouflaged as if it was conveying food in faraway Jalingo. They were on their way to Yola, Adamawa State. The concern is that for now, our borders have been closed. But while Nigeria has about 186 cases reported in the last, over the weekend, Cameroon across our border there has 1,017 cases. Niger has 639. Benin Republic has 35. Chad about 33. The concern is that we are lucky our borders are closed. Otherwise, there is still danger and we need to be very, very careful. Yeah. Community transmission is now a big challenge and must be contained.
Even as we speak, the borders, yes, are closed now, but then the possibility of having people entering the country is there. Just like you mentioned that some people were stopped, doing an interstate, travel, against what the measures are saying. But one wonders why Nigerians cannot take instructions, because it is the interstate travels, that actually, export this virus to states that are hitherto not with, in these cases. And most of the people that brought that into those states came from either Lagos or other parts of Nigeria. So the need for us to heed to the advice is apt.
Well, my point actually has to do with the numbers relating to the confirmed cases, those who have been discharged, and then the deaths. I don't think anyone should be surprised as to the increase in the numbers of confirmed cases of COVID-19 in the country. And that tells you two things. One, in my opinion, is that, look, the ramp up in testing, particularly in Lagos, is yielding these numbers, coupled with the lockdown. Because assuming people were moving about and then you had no way of testing them, and the incubation period of 2 to 14 days would have lingered on, and they would also be further spreading, the virus to other persons. So the fact that you have a lockdown means that there's restriction on movement in the first instance, and Lagos has undertaken the house-to-house testing of some of the persons who are suspected to have the symptoms. So the numbers, of course, have now emerged, and it is possible to take those persons who have been identified now into quarantine for treatment and management. Because if they remained within the population, then of course you would have had more exponential figures.
Exactly. That's the word. It would have been exponential.
Exponential. And you also saw part of that in the Federal Capital Territory sometime last week, as they went about from certain locations. They were to Tako, Mabushi, and I think one or two other places. Mpape, absolutely. And you remember Kirian? No, it was Claire who was on site with me. Bayo couldn't come in for the municipal review because of the massive checkpoints mounted, into the city. Because they said, look, let's contain what we have within the city so that people don't come in and go out. And then, assuming they come into contact with persons who have it in certain parts of the city, they go back to their various communities and then further spread it. So I think that this is in a sense, it's unfortunate, but it's salutary that we are seeing these numbers now and they can be managed. Increase the number of testing and then keep treating or managing those persons.
The best way to this now is that we have to prepare for the worst.
Absolutely.
Right? We have to prepare for the worst. We should expect more positive tests. That is certain. It is very certain. We should expect more and prepare to fight this virus, with all that we have, because invariably there are going to be more and more, not just in Lagos, but other parts of the country. That is what we are seeing and what we have seen in other countries of the world.
But
now,
you have said, look, if about a week or so ago, what were the numbers with regard to Kano? Today, Kano is ranked number 3. And there's already a lockdown for about 7 days. Some will say slow in coming. But if not properly managed, you could see a spike in those numbers.
Exactly. Yes. Now, let's go to the editorial. The editorial is also, part of a COVID-19 issue. But this is talking about COVID-19 is a biological puzzle. And we should listen to experts and not amateurs. Well, the editorial is titled Not 5G. It's from The Nation. And let me just read a few. What is not in dispute is that it came from a place few knew before, a few months ago in China, Wuhan. Even while the origin continues to puzzle humanity and the top chambers of science and laboratories, different kinds of speculations are in the air as to what can put it behind us. Some have thrown up the magic wand of chloroquine and anti-malaria drug familiar in this part of the world for decades. Now, this editorial is actually talking about the fact that people are believing that the origin of coronavirus is 5G and not a kind of biological origin. So, Bayo, what did you deduce from this?
Well, it's one of the myths that is surrounding the mystery about coronavirus because the virus is new. There have been several postulations that has been put across. But incidentally, Wuhan, where it originated, is also a place where there have been attempts to test 5G as a technology. 5G technology is the fifth generation of telephone handset that we use. And that frequency level is a lower frequency level. And it has ability to enhance communication using telephone system. The argument here is that because the kind of microwaves that emanate from 5G,
radiation.
Yes, radiation, a very minute level of radiation has a tendency to affect the oxygen within the body, and therefore there is a tendency that it's the one that is causing coronavirus. But apparently, this is one of the myths that scientists have disproved. In fact, this morning, I even saw a video on the social media of a preacher who was swearing that somebody called him and told him that they should switch off their phones at 11 p.m. This is because they are testing 5G, and between midnight and daybreak, 5G, when it is tested, continue to cause more coronavirus. It is completely false because the protein that is the coronavirus, its protein is biological. It is certainly not technical. It's not a byproduct of technology.
And what is becoming a puzzle for the world and the medical science world is actually the biological behavior of the virus, which has not been understood. Because if you understand the biological behavior, we may as well trace the means of checking it. And you see, I've seen on social media many persons, even from the US, sending some clips of trying to prove that I have been working in a laboratory for 5 or 10 years, as case may be, and that their business is to inject viruses in animals. I cannot see the connection, with 5G. You're talking about Wuhan. Wuhan has had 5G for years now. China has 5G in over 60 cities of China, and you have about 10 countries of the world, that have actually approved the use of 5G. But many countries, about 193, are experiencing a coronavirus. So how did 5G now spread it in other countries who have not even given license for 5G? Nigeria has not even given license for 5G. So how can we start mounting 5G in Nigeria when it's not licensed by NCC?
Well, I think it's one of the myths that must be dissipated. We have a virus which is purely a protein and biological that is causing these new diseases and killing people around the world. The way to tackle it is to obey the lockdown, avoid social contact, and observe hygiene so that we can put this coronavirus to where it belongs.
All right, Bayo, thank you very much. You guys have said what you needed to say, but it seems almost, with due respect, pointless arguing over what has been long since exposed as a business war between the two leading economies in the world as to, who gets to roll out 5G in the first instance rather than attributing it as a causative factor to coronavirus. Thank you very much. We'll see you again tomorrow. Okay, it's Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. We'll take a short break. Now, when we return, we'll be dealing with a lockdown in coronavirus and wave of crime around parts of the country.
The coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, is spreading at an alarming rate all over the globe, including Nigeria. With the number of infected persons in Nigeria increasing daily, prevention is better than cure. Coronavirus has no cure. The virus spreads from one person who affects two persons, and by the time the affected person is isolated, the two persons have affected four, and it keeps spreading. You must take preventive measures to save yourself and that of the people around you. Always wash your hands with soap and water. Put distance between yourself and others. Whenever you cough or sneeze, cover your mouth. Clean and disinfect surfaces. Stay at home if you're sick and contact the proper authorities. Together, we can cut down the spread of the coronavirus. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, Africa's largest TV network.
In Nigeria, there is one sound we need to silence. So let's silence toothache before it starts with Oral-B Oral all-round protection. Its advanced technology helps prevent both tooth holes and gum problems that can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your teeth, giving them all-round protection. Because the only sound we really want to hear is that of our future. For healthier, stronger teeth in 1 week.
Welcome, dear. Have you washed your hands?
Inside my house again. This thing not the key black man.
I don't know if it's misinformation or poor hygiene that will kill you first. Coronavirus is real, and good hygiene practice will save your life. Anyway, no hand washing, no eating.
I will not take care of it. How's one of the parents? Coronavirus is real and it's on the rise. But you can help yourself and help others to be safe. Remember, we can stop the spread. It's in your hands.
This message is from the Akinfade Foundation in partnership with the National Orientation Agency with support from MacArthur Foundation.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters, in view of the COVID-19 pandemic we are currently challenged with, we at Al-Habibiyya Islamic Society enjoin all Muslims to adhere strictly to government directives geared towards stopping the spread of the virus. These measures include the stay-at-home order, washing of hands with soap and water, using hand sanitizers where water is not available, and other hygiene measures. We remind you all of the words of Allah in the Holy Quran, chapter 2, verse 195, which says, "And do not throw yourselves with your own hands into destruction." We also remind you of the hadith of the noble Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, which says, "Do not cause harm or return harm." Please stay at home and stay safe with continuous dua. This message is from Project Eat Fine of Al-Habibiyya Islamic Society. Al-Habibiyya Islamic Society, from Allah to you, a light.
Encourage shopping with the right place. That one no fine. You know, nice. No, it's too dull. This one. Oh wow, it's beautiful. Omo, this fabric, it gon' fade though.
Yeah. Look, make I tell you something. The new area Ankara, it go take good care of it.
Right?
Not lie, not true.
And the price, cheap.
Try new Ariel on your Ankara and colors now.
I just don't understand this coronavirus thing. Is it real?
See, coronavirus, known as COVID-19, it's a global problem and has killed thousands of people in China, Italy, Spain, UK, US, and other countries around the world.
Okay. Now, why are they saying that we should stay home?
Because if you go outside and get in contact with someone who is infected, you become infected and then come back home, affect your family. That's how it happens in other countries.
Now, please, help me explain what this social distance is all about.
See, as we are now, the virus travels through the air and by touch. We must maintain 6 foot distance at all times.
Oh, so it's not by washing my hands with soap and water or hand sanitizer that is only important?
Washing of our hands regularly is very important. But we must come together and fight this virus like we did Ebola. It is our responsibility to each other.
And I've got this very important message for you guys. Stay at home. No. Stay safe. Noruma. This is the right thing to do at this time. And don't forget, remember to wash your hands. Sachasia kage samaya sama, sachasia isia kage ofuma. Together, we'll beat this thing. Are you ready now? Are you ready, man?
Well, we thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria for today. Our conversation this morning actually borders on COVID-19 lockdown and crime. And before we kickstart the conversation, here is Oyemi Ajayi with a background report.
The presidential announcement of the lockdown in Lagos and Ogun states, as well as the FCT, was applauded by Nigerians as a bold step aimed at curbing the spread of the coronavirus in Nigeria. Governors of some other states followed suit with partial or total lockdown to contain the pandemic. Considering the lockdown was painful but necessary, various palliatives in cash and commodities were put in place for distribution to poor and vulnerable Nigerians, in addition to waivers for essential workers to move around and perform their duties. While the effect of the lockdown is biting on Nigerians, some with criminal tendencies take to crime in the name of surviving the hard times. The social media have been awash with videos and reports of civil unrest and hoodlum attacks, especially in Lagos and Ogun states, with criminals reportedly terrorizing neighborhoods as the COVID-19 lockdown persists. Shops are reportedly looted, while innocent residents are being visited by men of the underworld who cut away valuables including foodstuff, which is essential in such difficult times. This has brought sleepless nights to many neighborhoods in Lagos and Ogun states, while residents resort in forming vigilante groups to secure themselves. The Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, has since deployed an intervention force to address the issue. The intervention became necessary as even the Lagos State Police Command reportedly arrested about 200 suspects on account of robbery and raping of young girls in a particular week. How prepared are the security personnel to secure lives and property during and after the restriction order? What more should government be doing to attend to social issues that could lead to crime? These and more questions will engage guests on Good Morning Nigeria shortly. Many thanks, Oyemi Ajayi, for that background. Here with us to discuss the issue in further detail, let's welcome retired Assistant Inspector General of Police, Wilson Nalego, who at some point in his career was also Commissioner of Police of the Federal Capital Territory. Retired AIG, pleasure to have you with us on Good Morning.
Yeah, pleasure for me to be here. Good morning.
Also here with us in the studios, one of our regular security analysts, security expert, Dr. Kabir Adamu. Dr. Adamu, pleasure to have you around this morning.
Pleasure, it's mine. Good morning.
Okay.
And joining us from Kaduna studio is Mohammed Ali, security expert. I'd like to have you this morning on our program.
It's my pleasure. Good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you. And via Skype from Lagos is Dr. Ona Ehomo. He's a security expert and president, Association of Industrial Security and Safety Operations. We thank you for coming on this show today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kieran, and good morning to everyone.
All right, gentlemen, of course, you're all familiar with reports of incidents of crime in parts of the country, more particularly Lagos-Ogun axis. And this is worrisome to observers because on account of the federally mandated lockdown in the Federal Capital Territory, Lagos and Ogun, the presumption would be that if people were not moving around, then the level of crime, let's just say crime against property, not necessarily e-crime now, would be minimized. But that doesn't appear to be the case. What's your reading of the situation? Let's begin with retired AIG, Wilson Nalego.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, it's about 100 years ago that we had the Spanish flu, 1918-1919. And following the presidential directive, the Nigeria Police Force, having the primacy on internal security, went to business. I'm sure they prepared their operations order and deployed their assets to enforce the lockdown and deal with other matters that will arise. But when things like this happen, there are other unintended consequences that come with it. And some people took advantage of the situation. But from your narration, some people took laws into their hands and decided to harass innocent citizens. I think the police reaction was robust, making arrests of almost 200 suspected criminals. And the IG took a further step. But the deployment that the police made, which I think was, in addition to enforcing the lockdown, there were plainclothes officers that were deployed to the various communities to see all this. But for the reaction of the police, I believe the situation may have gone out of hand. So when you have a situation like this, things come that can take you, and then you see how your reaction. So what will I do? What's so critical in matters like this is what has been the response of the police. And I think the IG wasted no time. Responded. The commissioners of police, Lagos and Ogun, collaborated and dealt with the situation emerging at their borders. And I think since then, the situation has been calm. But things like this happened and they throw up new challenges. And those new challenges is for the relevant agency, the police working with other agencies, to cooperate and collaborate. And that brings us to very critical elements, which I will go into. First of all, the response to such situation, distress calls, the helplines, how are they useful? How has the police response been? Then the other issue is about constant engagement through the media and others of the police with the populace, so that when you find yourself in such a situation, you'll not be helpless. And I think there are new challenges. Exactly. And the police responded.
Exactly. You talked more about response by the police, which of course is obvious. And of course, some persons may be talking about proactiveness. What has been the plan? Knowing that this lockdown may generate a new kind of criminality. Criminals are a dynamic set of people, They study societal situation and environment, and of course devise methodologies, that could approach, to begin to function effectively and efficiently. And that's what has happened. Apart from the robbery we had in Lagos and the Ogun, we also had banditry in Katsina. And there's a new wave now of e-crime, which is where I want to bring in our friend here in the studio. E-crime has also, stepped up. With people opening platforms on social media, using it to extort money and what have you. In this present circumstance, what would be the right approach, to see how we can cope the situation in this lockdown era?
In the first place, I think there should have been a model analysis. This is a new situation. Everybody's playing catch up. We have to face that reality all over the world, not just in Nigeria. But there are models that help people in playing that catch up. So the president, through regulation 2020, announced the first lockdown, and then the second regulation, the extension of the lockdown. So we knew. I'm starting from the standpoint that the security agencies have the mandate for enforcement through that regulation. Their task was spelled out clearly by Mr. President. The Presidential Task Force gave down details through guidelines of what the security agencies should do. My co-discussant has mentioned operational order. Now, did they do a model that would allow them identify existing threats? Because like what happened in Lagos and Ogun State, there are existing threats. These are gangs who had a threat profile that we all know, and I'm sure if you speak to the police in Lagos as well as the other security agencies, they know of the existence of these gangs. Now, what did we do to be ahead of these gangs and make sure they didn't do what they did? So I think there was a gap there. The second component is how did we also engage the public to sensitize them of the possibility of this type of crime incident. So speaking about cybercrime, what has happened is there has been a lifestyle change. And unfortunately, I think some of us are yet to accept that this COVID-19 situation and the lockdown has created a complete lifestyle change. The usage of cyberspace has increased tremendously. Before the lockdown, I was using a particular provider, and it was functional. Now, as I'm talking, that platform is no longer functional because of the pressure on it. And I'm sure a lot of Nigerians are also going through that reality. And the simple reason is that usage has increased. So the bandwidth that particular provider had available is no longer useful to its users. I'm trying to buttress my point that the cyberspace has actually increased. So that means physical criminals who, for instance, would visit properties and other physical aspects of security no longer, perhaps don't have that opportunity any longer. What has happened is they have seen opportunities in the cyberspace and they are taking advantage of those opportunities. Now, the most interesting thing for me is that ahead of the lockdown, Interpol actually released a report where it warned its members that this is going to happen and gave where and what is likely to happen. As an example, it talked about supply chain, especially in the health sector. If you recall, just last week, they busted a crime syndicate that was allegedly selling, the possibility of buying face masks. Now, they warned of that almost about a month ago. And interestingly, the Nigerian police picked it up and actually put it out there in the public. So that was good. A warning had come. We picked it up and we've sent it out. But I think the challenge is this: how much of that messaging actually reached Nigerians in a manner that they will understand. The media did an amazing job by picking it up and putting it out there. But I think there were some gaps here, or there. So the cyberspace is rife with a lot of criminality, no doubt. And I think there needs to be an increase in the types of communication that goes out there so that Nigerians take note of this. And then, of course, the preventive measures. What are these preventive measures? Currently, there are so many things you can do on, using your computer or you're using your phone to do certain transactions so that you reduce your vulnerability.
All right, Kabir, thank you very much there for your response. I want to go to Dr. Onai Homo, who is with us via Skype when he was introduced, and you saw him on the screen a while ago. Dr. Onai Homo, I would like to return to the issue of property crimes under the lockdown regime that we're having in most parts of the country now, including, of course, the federally directed locations of the FCT, Lagos and Ogun. Now, it would appear that law-abiding citizens were or have become sitting ducks for roaming gangs. And these law-abiding citizens who are in lockdown appear to have no immediate succor coming from the security agencies, which is why the so-called 1 million boys were moving about in parts of Lagos with all kinds of cudgels and machetes. How do we understand this? I mean, the hooligans themselves appeared not to care a hoot about their own health conditions because they don't observe social distancing. They don't know whether those who are going to attack are sufferers or carriers of the coronavirus. What's your take?
Thank you very much, Honorable Kingsley, for having me on. Well, the problem of gang and cult violence in Lagos and other metropolitan areas, River State, Delta State, is quite widespread. Now, here in Lagos, what we've experienced with the lockdown is an assault or a renewed assault from the 1 million boys gang. This gang was formed back in 2011 in Ajegunle, and it was first a useful gang because it was helping to fight some social ills. But as the membership grew, it took on deviant nature and started attacking people and stealing property. Now, what has happened is that it was chased out of Lagos, or it was, at least its effect was minimized under the tenure of CP Edgar Imoyimi. who took gang violence as a cause of his here. And but now with the lockdown, they came back in full force, and they have been kind of governing some areas of Lagos to the consternation of citizens here, because they visit homes, they take whatever they like, and many landlords have had, along with some armed people, to fight back these million boys gang. Now, the Awawa group, which was formed in Agege, used to be dance entertainers. They used to go to parties and take over parties and dance. And if they are not settled, then they will disrupt the party. But they have since become a violent cult group, and they have also staged a comeback. So I think it's safe to say that Lagos, due to the lockdown, is now experiencing a resurgence in cult violence, particularly in suburban areas. Perhaps not so much in Ikoyi and Victoria Land, and maybe parts of Lekki, but in the Agege, in the Ogun and Lagos border areas, we have a lot of that violence going on. Now, like Mr. Inalegu said just then, the IG had responded with the STS, Mopol, and other security assets, other police assets, to assist the commissioners in Lagos and Ogun to combat this violence. Now, the other day, our CP here in Lagos came out and said that the boys are no longer marching. But what I'm hearing from citizens is that the husbands are still not sleeping at home at night. They are still doing vigilance, and they are being attacked, and they are attacking. So I think I want to say that Mr. Kabir was thinking the way I'm thinking, Dr. Kabir there with you, when he said that, when this presidential order was given, even before it was given, because we saw what was happening around the world, and we knew that in time to come, we might have to adopt the same containment strategy. So it appears to me that that's the time when our security forces will have the time to prepare, really. So that's called a proactive strategy in policing, rather than waiting for the million boys to strike and then start selling in assets. Because sometimes these criminal incidents, they take on a life of their own. And it's not something that you can't turn it off and turn it off like a light switch or like African water tap. Sometimes it takes on a life and it becomes a problem. So I think it's still an existential threat. And I think the vulnerabilities are there, because when you have a lockdown, everybody's at home, and we can't go out. And we know the biggest vulnerability in Nigeria is inadequate resourcing of the police agency. We don't have enough policemen to go around. So when you have so few resources on ground, you do not create a deterrent. And the greatest way of curbing crime anywhere in the world is by deterrence. People have to fear and not commit. But if you dare them to commit, then of course they go and do whatever they like. And then you have to run around using a lot of assets to try to detect who did it. And of course, we are not very good at that in this part of the world.
Thank you indeed. What is interesting here is the fact that Onai Ikomu, you have knowledge and understanding of the operational strategy of some of these gangs that you mentioned. And one may wonder if these gangs are existing in Lagos, why have they been allowed to function in Lagos? That's a very big question, because one, you've mentioned their name, they are known, they are individuals, they are operating in Lagos, and the security men should know where they are and perhaps what they do. In any case, we're going to come back to you. For now, let's go to Kaduna. Let's go to Kaduna, where we'll have Muhammad Ali. Muhammad Ali, Kaduna is also a state that we've heard so much about in terms of criminality. Kidnapping is also part of what's happening in Kaduna within this lockdown period. We also had about a young mother, we have not really clarified the story, but it's just what we had, And a young mother, an albino, was murdered alongside her little child because somebody lured her out, informed her that they are sharing some palliatives somewhere, and she joined. And then at the end of the day, her body was found somewhere. I don't know whether that is true or not, but you can clarify that. And again, how do you see, the crime wave within this period, with emphasis on Kaduna?
Thank you very much. It's important we understand that an individual's occupation or means of employment is what stands between him and a life of crime. Accordingly, property crime such as theft, burglary, and shoplifting, about 50% of these are mostly committed by what you may refer to as people that are out of job, the underemployed or the unemployed. But to date, there is no definite statistical data linking unemployment and crime. And particularly in this material time that we find ourselves as a result of the pandemic, everybody is staying at home. As Dr. Kabir rightly observed, there should have been some projection as to what will happen or what are the likely consequences of staying at home, what will happen as it relates to issues of crime and criminality. And as the other discussant from Lagos observed, the police are not everywhere, and this is because the police we have in the country are not adequate enough to police the entire country, and this is where the assistance of the informal sector comes in. We need to encourage informal sectors or members of vigilante groups, wherever they are within the country, to work hand in hand with the Nigerian police and other security agencies in order to upgrade the issue of policing, particularly at this material time. And with reference to the murder that was alleged to have happened in Kaduna, I think there are a lot of speculations going on as it relates to issues of crime and criminality. To date, we have not had such an occurrence. Rather, people are trying to make projections or speculate as to what has happened, not only to have a chance to commit crime, but to also try to instigate one community against the other in this material time. So this is why I think there is a need for all of us to be to come on deck and see how best we can assist the security agencies in ensuring that enough security is provided in this material time of the lockdown. But again, it is important we take note of the fact that, yes, certainly, there is a resurgence of crime in some parts of the country, while in some others, there is relative occurrence. For example, we talked about the 1 million boys in parts of Lagos and the axis of Ogun State. There is also the issue of the killings that occurred in Katsina on Saturday. All these issues that are happening because the criminals are trying to take advantage of the lockdown to do what they are doing. So this is why it behoves us to sit down and draw out an operational order in order to be proactive, to try to preempt whatever the criminals are trying to do. But in some instances, like in Kaduna, for example, I think there is a drop as far as the issue of crime and criminality is concerned, because the police, the civil defense, the DSS and other security agencies are out there doing the best they can to ensure that people don't just remain indoors, but their security is also ensured. So this, to my mind, is I think what is happening for the moment, but a lot still needs to be done.
All right. Thank you very much, Muhammad Ali, for your comment. We'll return to it in the course of the conversation. But let's try and grapple with which normally a popular wisdom, in the sense that the expectation was with the enunciation of the lockdown directive in most parts of the country now, that it would facilitate policing rather than impede policing, because the line of sight of the police officers will be much clearer. I mean, there's less vehicular movement, and so you can see much further. People are virtually indoors, or mostly, sequestered, as it were, and so you can readily, move around. There's greater mobility. But why does that appear not to be the case? Because we don't have the numbers in terms of criminality, with the exception, of course, of what is happening out in Lagos, parts of FCT, and Ogun states. Let's take Kabir and respond to the question, because they say that inadequate police officers, 2 weeks ago on this program, the suggestion came that, look, this is a time to withdraw all those police officers who are on private security guard functions.
You're right, Kingsley. You couldn't have captured it better. However, a study was conducted just before the announcement of the lockdown by Mr. President on how policing, the model of policing that we used to know, is likely to change as a result of COVID-19 for about 3 reasons. Firstly, there needs to be a transformation of policing. The issue of lockdown has raised questions around the legitimacy of policing, as an example. The right of movement that you and I have is being impeded, unfortunately, by security action. Certain legal luminaries have actually raised that question, that does the government have the right to stop people from movement? So now the police has been asked to go and enforce that issue that is being debated, whether it's legitimate or not. And they have to, because, it's their responsibility to do it. So I think that's the first thing. That social contract that is between government and the citizen is unfortunately changing. Because people on their part now that are supposed to be quote-unquote law-abiding are actually beginning to question that. Why? Because they have to feed. The woman who puts okpa on her head and has a family of 7 to feed, all of a sudden cannot go out. Now, what does she do to feed those 7 people? She's expecting a palliative. The palliative has not come. So that's where I think the discussant from Kaduna brought up the issue of criminality and unemployment. So to answer your question, firstly, the security agencies are overstretched. In Nigeria, we know that for a fact. And this new policing requirement is going to add to that. They are being overstretched, no doubt about it. They need to look at their model. Withdrawing security personnel from VIPs is an example. That model is not sustainable. As an example, they need to withdraw those personnel and then see how they can respond to this new requirement. The second issue that has come up is the legitimacy of their functions. That also needs to be addressed. And for the sake of this discussion, I'm going to refer to the report by the Human Rights Commission that was released on the 14th. It was a very detailed report where, unfortunately, they detailed what they call human rights abuses by the security agencies and claimed that 18 people have been killed during the first period of the lockdown. And the interesting thing for me in that report is that, unlike what the public believes, that it's the police that is actually at the forefront of that, it's the correctional service. In that report, more people were actually killed by the correctional services, the prison services, by that. The second component is the police, and then the third one is the military. But interestingly, and it was highlighted by that report, the security agencies have responded adequately in terms of providing platforms to address these human rights abuses. So I think it's a matter of not being proactive and being reactive. The things were allowed to happen before they responded. The third component, which is also very important, is the inability of the institutions to protect their personnel. We're playing catch-up. This thing came to us, The police perhaps didn't have personal protective equipment to issue to their staff. The other security agencies didn't have, but yet they send them out to the public. Now, the second consequence of that is that some citizens refuse to obey the directive of the security agencies because they are afraid that, well, since you are not protecting yourself and you want me to stop, how can I stop when I can actually contract that disease to you? So it's a whole lot of things and that has crept up on us and that we need to respond immediately. One of the things I've mentioned is that I think the Presidential Task Force on COVID-19 needs to have a security subcommittee that should use a model that would be able to analyze where we are and where we're likely to be. All of the threat factors that we're discussing here are threat factors that existed even before COVID-19. And I don't want to be a harbinger of bad news. There will be threat factors that will emerge from COVID-19.
Especially when the lockdown is extended further and further,
exactly.
For the interest of
so
all.
So we need to identify, let's take note of where we are, what we have, and identify the ones to come. And then the assets at our disposal. How are we going to now deploy those assets? Firstly, to prevent the ones that are already existing, and then to ensure that the ones that will emerge will not sit here and be discussing them.
Well, it means that after coronavirus, we should actually be talking about the new normal. Right, things have to change. The way we do things have to change. Exactly. And I'm taking up one of the things you mentioned, transformation of policing in Nigeria, which of course, perhaps you said that, look, some of the causative factors existed before coronavirus, but now it has been, intensified. We could see that now if you don't make any move to change the course of history of policing in the country, you may not be able to police Nigerians at all, given the fact also that we don't have adequate number of policemen to police Nigerians. We say we are over about 200 million people. Right, and I want to bring in a former, or rather, Assistant Inspector General of Police retired, Wilson Nalegu. Now, talking about transformation of policing, you have been policing Nigeria for throughout your life, throughout your active life as in service. Now you're out of service. You can monitor the police properly. You can see what the police is doing. You can make an assessment of the police in Nigeria from the point of view of the fact that you are now out of service. Now, what could be done to checkmate the modern trend in criminality with respect to COVID-19? What are those models, which of course our friend has been talking about here this morning? What are the models, that could be adopted? Because this modeling now, you're not going to get it from anybody else because it's a new thing. You have to develop your own concept of it. So how can it work?
I want to say that the police at the moment is undergoing a kind of transformation in the way their services are delivered. Like the point he made about the Presidential Task Force having a security subcomponent. I want to remark on that. The first thing I want to say, there should be more engagement with the public. Bring the community to be more engaged in policing. How are we going to achieve that? All that happened in Lagos or happened in Kaduna or Katsina, this has happened within communities. And so, I think the first step is the police needs to get the trust of the public. How do they get the trust of the public? Because for you to effectively police the public, respect for human rights, responding timely and robustly to their needs, and they begin to see a change in you. So the first thing is about accountability. Once you bring about accountability, first of all, the police should be more forward-looking in bringing the public. Like the Presidential Task Force engages the public every day. I think the police can also adjust their communication strategy. Perhaps once a week, have a formal press conference or formal engagement with the public so that they can take in a lot from the public. Because each time the Presidential Task Force engages the public, the journalists ask questions. From those questions, they react to them. And so all that we are discussing here today, if we have perhaps once or twice a week in this period of lockdown and going forward, you have the AIG, the DIG operations or AIG operations coming to talk about everything that is going on as far as crime and security is concerned. People are able to ask questions. Those inputs, those will help to begin to bring about a change. That is one. Talking again of accountability, once you have this kind of engagement, some of those infractions, those other things come up. So accountable leadership will help greatly. Another thing I think can be done that can transform, the policies. Part of this engagement, like once or twice a week, you have you have a summary of actions taken on some of the complaints. Not to wait and then for the public to even ask. That is, you have a robust change management team, a change team that will begin to work on some of the regular complaints. That is one area I think there could be a radical, transformation, regular engagement, organize, not when things happen, but that you expect that every Monday or every Tuesday, 2 p.m. or Wednesday, you are going to expect that the police will address, not only when the IG is having a conference with the commissioners of police and AIGs. This brings about accountable leadership. That, for me, is one step. And then the community policing, I think, is part of the transformation, where the public will have a say in the way they are policed. I think it's another area of transforming, the police. And one other thing I want to talk about, there are potential threats when you are drawing up an ops order, but things can change. One other thing that I think can transform, can help, is the police working actively with the National Communications Commission or Nigerian Communications Commission to actively pursue the setting up of the National Emergency Call Center, which has been started, because people must have a place to vent. All this, I think, will bring about a kind of change. Yes, accountability involves the way personnel are deployed, and that's what you talk about, withdrawing from unauthorized individuals. That is also part. And another thing, I'm sorry, I think that can go a long way, is the police having some kind of engagement more with the private security. The private security, if they work more closely with the police, can help the police grow larger by multiplying the number. That means some duties that the police is performing, you could have the private security that are properly accredited to fill in some of those gaps. And that is a way of collaboration. Right now, the police collaborates with sister security agencies actively. So the process of transformation for me is start with more accountable leadership and more community engagement, and organize weekly engagement with the public so that you can have. And then having a proper disciplinary structure that the public will know that this complaint I made has listen. All this will help to begin to transform the police. I think the IG promised
let me pause you there, retired AIG. I mean, the points that you've made are noted, but Dr. Onaihomo earlier talked about the persistence of existential threats, also amplified by the other guests. Part of the reports that went viral over the weekend had to do with, an attack in the FCT here in Kubwa, one of the satellite locations out of Abuja city. That the people were under attack, and they called on the police station, and they said they were sleeping. I'm not sure if you read that report. And I think the gangsters abandoned the vehicle there, and somebody eventually came to come and pick up the vehicle.
No, as a matter of fact, a friend called me who lives on that street. He called me to say, look, that in the morning when some people came to get the car that they used, because they said in the night they laid ambush for the criminals and actually stopped them from leaving the estate. So now the next day they returned to come and pick up the vehicle. That was when they started calling. He called me out to say, look, what did I bring into here? I said, what's happening? He said, look, that some people who robbed them last night, that they believe they have called them because they came to to retrieve the car that they used last night. And again, as a matter of fact, NTA was there, Channel 5 was there, and other perhaps media organizations were there.
So I mean, this is not fiction. I mean, for people who go through all of these kinds of things, I mean, if they had to mount their own civil defense overnight, I'm sure at this time they will be sleeping. So these are the kind of threats that they face. I want to go back to Dr. Onaihomo. Onaihomo, in Lagos, I mean, you were talking about the gangs, 1 million boys, and then Awawa. There used to also be the Badu boys in Ikorodu. Have they also resurrected, in light of what is playing out? Or is Ikorodu quiescent in the meantime? So that's one leg of the question. The second leg, of course, also relates to what we continue to hear, and Muhammad Ali in Kaduna was alluding to that. Look, some people say that, hunger virus is also very important. Let the hunger, as Nigerians would say, cuckoo kill us. Instead of, let coronavirus cuckoo kill us. We have to be out there to feed. But there is a public health imperative that underpins the lockdown. I mean, it's for the interest of all of us, including those who do not appear to recognize the severity of what we are dealing with. I mean, you know the U.S. very well. You went to school in the U.S. As we speak, the U.S. has recorded 25% of worldwide deaths, arising from coronavirus. Over 41,000 persons have died from that virus, plus the strain it puts on the healthcare system. So, how long, can law enforcement manage this lawlessness, as well as the necessity for maintaining the lockdown, which is for our own benefit?
Thank you very much, Honorable Kingsley. Well, I think first let me deal with the issue of the Badu boys that you raised in your question. The Badu boys, I think when Imoimi carried that assault against them, he was able to kind of knock them down. Those were the cult guys who used to go and smash people's skulls and rub a white hanky on their skull. It was kind of like a gang initiation protocol. And they said it gave them some kind of babalawo spiritual powers and what have you. But I think those ones, they were neutralized quite effectively. So we've not seen a resurgence of that particular threat. I'm not saying that they are not there, but they've not resurged given the lockdown, the vulnerability that the lockdown has provided. Now, the other question you asked was about managing the issue of hunger. But before I go to that, let's go to where I think this solution really is. And that was a brilliant question you asked just now about police transformation, because we must have a knowledge-driven, a very strategic police agency, as it were. we need to do some kind of a balanced scorecard for our police agency and explore all kinds of strategic themes and strategic variables, strategy maps, SWOT, what have you, such that we can know what are the weaknesses, what are the strengths of our police agency, what are the things that are important. Now, this is all, I've already talked about what went from coming in here, which is we didn't anticipate, because we have to get a crystal ball so that we can look in, gaze in the crystal ball and see what the problems are going to be. That's called threat assessment. Just like I think Mr. Inalegu was saying just now, that we need to get elements of private security to join with public security agents like the police agency, such that, because we have the knowledge reservoir, we can do all that thinking. And we have these models, like Kabiru sitting there with you in the studio is a powerhouse. We have these models we can bring in to help the police formulate threat assessments, risk assessments. I mean, let's leave the threats out. Let's look at the risks, even when they are further off, out down the street. What could possibly go wrong? Even before we now go to threats, which are closer to the occurrences, and then looking at also the vulnerabilities, what will enable these loss events, and what these potential loss events become actual loss events. So these are all things that are in the knowledge realm that we need to look at. Perhaps you want to look at the Senate report on the Nigerian security challenges. That was it. I just came out. I think Kabiru was very involved in that effort. That just came out of the Senate. So we need to look at these things, and we need to now go to a knowledge-led policing. We need to look at strategic policing. I remember many years ago when Mr. Ogbonna Novo was made IGP, I was writing a column in Punch then, and I wrote a series of strategic management options or initiatives for the police agency. I think they can go and look for that and dust it up, and that will give them a good lead on how to go forward. But now, back to your other question about the nexus between hunger and the kinds of security challenges we are seeing. Well, I think they said if coronavirus doesn't kill you, hunger virus might kill you. So what we have there is that there's a social problem, there's a health crisis, and then there's a social problem. Hunger is one of the Maslowian physiological needs. If you are hungry, even if corona is raging outside, you have to go out and look for what to eat. But I'm not justifying for anybody to go out, please. I think that now goes to what you just said also, Honorable Kingsley, that the government palliatives, again, it's a problem of poor planning of the whole thing. The government palliatives, if they could get to a lot of Nigerians or to the people who are truly deserving, then that will probably reduce the pressure of people saying that they want to go out and eat. Now, let me say one thing to what Mr. Ali in Kaduna said. Somebody who is not criminally inclined, no matter how hungry they are not going to go and rob the next person, which is where my own model, talking about Kabiru's model, failed. Because before the coronavirus, before the lockdown, I issued a press release saying that we are going to have a spike in property crimes. But I didn't remember that the bandits were still roaming around Katsina and they were going to kill so many people up there. And so I didn't factor in the crimes of violence, and which we are seeing a lot of now also.
All right, thank you indeed, Dr. Ehum. Permit me to appreciate the fact that you and Kingsley are Lagos boys, where you have a better understanding of these gangs that operate in Lagos.
Are you suggesting that we are gangsters?
No, I didn't say you are men. You have knowledge of them. Right. Thank you. We're going to take a short break now, but not before we go to Kaduna. As a matter of fact, I'm bringing Muhammad Ali. You have listened to other guests and talk extensively about the issue of transformation or reformation, if you like, or ramping up efforts about on security in Nigeria. We have already raised some of the causative factors for the inability of police to really police Nigeria adequately. Now, what would be your own suggestion? We're being remedial now. What would be your own suggestion as to what the police can do going forward?
I actually concur with the submissions of all the three guests out there. And the truth remains that we need to have a knowledge-driven police force if really we want to make it. The police force must be knowledge-driven. And we also have to do the best we can to ensure that the number of policemen in the country is increased. Because as of last year, Mr. President gave the directives that 10,000 policemen be recruited. I think that is not enough. In order to meet up the challenges and to really remain proactive, it will be imperative if from this year to the year 2030, a recruitment of 100,000 policemen should continue to be done between now and 2030, which at the end will give us about roughly about 1 million policemen. That will just be for a start, because with a population of about 201 million, the present number of policemen we have is just about 345,000, most of whom, some will be due for retirement, some will have to leave the service probably as a result of wrong conduct or issues like that, while quite a number of them are posted out to work in government houses. Some are attached to governors' wives, the National Assembly, etc. So this, I think, we have to sit down and review all these things in order to actually put the police on a proper state for them to be able to police the country and properly too.
Mohammed Ali, thank you very much there for your comments. As my colleague Kieran indicated, we're taking a short break now. When we return from the break, we'll also take the tweets, quite a lot of them that have come in, and then, of course, we'll go back to our guests.
For now, the best and most efficient way to avoid getting infected is through regular hygienic and sanitary practices, as well as social distancing. As individuals, we remain the greatest weapon to fight this pandemic. By washing our hands regularly with clean water and soap, disinfecting frequently used surfaces and areas, coughing into a tissue or elbow, and strictly adhering to infection prevention control measures in health facilities, we can contain this virus.
Breakfast your day, every day.
Nestle, good food, good life.
Nigerians, coronavirus is dangerous. It can kill. When you see this sign, high fever, cough, shortness of breath, drowsiness, pneumonia, don't panic, don't hide. Don't embark in self-medication. Promptly visit the nearest medical facility. Report all cases to the nearest hospital. Prevention is key. Avoid contact with infected persons. Avoid crowded areas as much as possible. Wash your hands regularly. Use hand sanitizers. Your life is precious. Stay alive. Live long, live right. This message is sponsored by the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture and the Nigerian Film Corporation. Nigerian Film Corporation, powering possibility.
Getting around heartburn and indigestion can be tricky if you eat too much. Eat food that is too spicy or greasy, or lie down after eating. Heartburn and indigestion could always be around the corner. When they come, be prepared with Gaviscon Double Action. It works within 3 minutes and lasts up to 4 hours. Gaviscon Double Action. Many causes, one solution.
Son, being good at something requires strength. It requires putting in more. That's why the new improved Bonvita is packed with vitality and a richer, creamier taste.
Over the past few seasons, Airtel Touching Lives has helped to empower and uplift thousands of Nigerians. And this season was no different.
People are really suffering.
I still have a hope.
I know that God doesn't leave things halfway.
Thank you to all our viewers for inviting us into your homes and sharing in our journey as we continue to change lives.
Wetin be this coronavirus thing? Na true?
You see this coronavirus wey be COVID-19. Na the whole world palava, and e don dey kill many people for China, Italy, UK, US, Spain, and even for other countries dem.
Okay, wetin come be the reason wey dem say make everybody tanda for house?
Na because if e dey waka pium go carry am from person wey don get am, you go carry come give your family dem. Na so the thing take dey kill other people for other countries.
Okay, wetin come be that social distancing sef?
You see social distance. Now make we no come close because this thing na from air and touch now we dey contact am. We suppose dey at least 6 foot away from each other every time.
So okay, no be only to wash your hand and to sanitize am alone.
Make we no take this washing of hand thing take play but make we come together, join hand as we take pursue Ebola, pursue this coronavirus. Make we be each other keepers now.
All right, you're welcome back, and it's still Good Morning Nigeria, reaching you live on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We are not going to have to go through the tweets sent in by our viewers. Philip Emmanuel, considering the hardship, hunger, and frustration facing most Nigerians since there is a partial disbursement of COVID-19 palliatives, who is to blame?
All right, from Dele Jack Solomon. In order for Nigeria to become a safer place to live, work, and visit, the city must encourage transparency in law enforcement from the police department to the DSS, SSS, and SARS. Criminal justice reform shouldn't be pursued at the expense of community safety.
Akinrotimi Odunayo tweets, government should use this opportunity to empower the youth at the grassroots level, and those already in business need help to enlarge their business and encourage others into agriculture.
Ahmad Dachalam says the fact is that the lockdown cannot be sustained, but if the government insisted on locking people in their houses without meaningful palliative, crime will increase and the masses will surely react.
Now, Marvin Neal, there would be a revolt soon if the lockdown persists beyond this week. Hunger is in town. People would rather die of a virus they can't see than be starved to death by being prevented from their businesses, since they said palliatives can't go around. Well, Kiri, I think we need to respond to this. Look, let's be careful. We're just about 3 weeks into a lockdown in some of the locations. Wuhan was in lockdown for well over 11 weeks, and parts of Europe, first world countries, Italy, Spain, and Germany have been on lockdown for several weeks. It's only now that the lockdown is being relaxed gradually. So there's no point, in picking up arms and saying that you're going to stage a revolt.
To be prepared for the worst.
The enemy in coronavirus is one you cannot see. It's not as if you carry your bazooka, you carry your machete, and you say, let me go and kill corona.
Yes, it's a medical war. Yes. Now, Jehovah says the crime rate has increased in my area since Easter Sunday. We haven't slept in our area. Shasha, I don't know where it's called Shasha in Abuja. Okay, in Lagos, right? Shasha. Okay, it's a Jimo bus stop of Alimosho, Lagos. We the men keep vigil outside till dawn to protect ourselves and family. Yet, no single police or any force agency has come to assure us of safety.
All right, Padamasi Adamo says the substructure of other security is food security. Now, every other security is superstructure. More so, the law of nature is self-preservation. So, meanwhile, you can't lock down the people without first providing them with what to eat. I urge security agencies not to only focus on the other restrictions, but also ensure that the populace are safe from the miscreants.
Amos has a different opinion altogether. It's a pity that people talk about hunger and starvation these times. Lies. Nobody will die of starvation. Complain, that's all.
Now, Awal Garba tweets, now, method of distributing palliatives is wrong. There are millions of Nigerians with BVN number, and relief funds can be provided through that. Palliatives that are given are not reaching the masses.
Akeju Olabaji says, I still believe the crime rates have dropped in spite of the few criminals that invaded Lagos communities of recent. The reason is connected with lockdown, and the only few are exposed to the risk of being the victims. We must really give kudos to our police and other security agents.
Now, Samuel Abonoaye tweets, the Nigerian government must realize that persons perpetrating crime are from within. So they need to do their empirical-driven feedback. They need to get their empirical data from what is happening in society.
Hasias Hale, based on the lockdown for COVID-19, federal government and the states should take more appropriate measures by analyzing efforts to curtail the spread of the virus in both urban and rural areas.
Jack Solomon again says, with many people now at home, one would expect a decrease in burglaries and other criminal activities in most countries of the world. But the reverse appears to be the case. Now, in Nigeria, communities in states such as Lagos, Ogun, Rivers, Anambra have experienced residential burglaries, kidnapping, and rape.
Mike Anyako, something so different today. Too much lockdown is more dangerous than Corona itself. Make we shine our eyes.
Well, too much lockdown. We have seen the benefit of the lockdown in Lagos, for instance.
That's why I say Mike Anyako sounded different.
Different today, absolutely, Kirian. Law Alpha C says gradually there's a resurgence of criminal activities across the nation, no thanks to the lockdown. It's true that the palliative measures by different governments are not getting to most of the vulnerable, but man must work. Yeah, man must work. I mean, if there were no palliatives, what would you do?
All right, Chris Simeon, I think we have a litany of tools here. I'm not sure we can take all of them.
Yeah.
But let's just take Chris Simeon. Everything we do in life has either advantages or disadvantages. The lockdown directive given by federal and state governments as a result of COVID-19 has imposed serious security threats in some parts of the country. For instance, the 1 million boys and co have made life miserable for the residents living in Ogun and Lagos.
All right, so we'd like the others, Leo Fadaka, Anosike Kingsley, Onyinye Ugoke, Francis Obi, Fagun Robert, Usman Banu Kantu, and Bashiru. We'd like to thank you for the tweets that you have sent in. We're getting pressed for time. Now, we have, gentlemen, almost inevitably on account of the bearing that we took from the background report and the incidents that we're focused on, we have largely focused on a crime, but more particularly property offenses. I don't know, Kabir, whether we had you on the program. Just as we were getting into, the early stages of the lockdown, we had a conversation. As well, Frank Kumba, DCP and the current Force Public Relations Officer, joined us via Skype. If we were on that conversation, remind us, Kabir, that part of what the policing authorities were looking at for included not just a spike in, say, cyber crime, which appears to be the case, but also in domestic violence, because when people get locked in under the same roof and boredom sets in, and after a while, everybody, you want a space. We don't have the data yet, but what can we pick from anecdotal evidence as to what is happening? I mean, you see all kinds of videos. You see women are happy that their husbands are home. We don't know why many fights are broken out in all of this. Kabir.
Yes, we do have statistical data, fortunately, based on the report released by the National Human Rights Commission. They looked at thematic areas that were reported. They received 103 human rights allegation reports, and out of that, 61%, according to the report, is on sexual and gender-based violence, quote and unquote, the domestic violence that we're talking about. So that is huge. And like I said at the beginning in my opening statements, this is a lifestyle change situation, and it has created a totally new issue. Now, the worry for me, and time will not allow us, the psychology of security itself. We are in a state of grief, all of us, in one way or the other. Why are we grieving? What we know as normal before is no longer what it used to be. You work, except for those in essential duties who can still go out. But as an example, even here in your studio, before, when we come, there are certain persons that we'll meet. Now they can't come to work. So what state of mind? There are 5 stages of grief, starting from denial to outright, rejection. Every Nigerian is going through one or the other of that state. Now, have our security agencies been tutored on this state of grief? how do they respond to this state of grief? As a husband, if your wife is in that state of grief, how do you respond to her? Do you now demand your rights as a husband when she's in that state of grief? Or as a wife, if your husband is in that state of grief, how do you respond to him? So I think there is a need for especially the psychologists and psychiatrists and other mind experts among us to start speaking. They are doing a wonderful job, frankly, because I see them online and all that, but they need to speak specifically. Yesterday, I'm sure you covered over the weekend, the One World Together campaign that some artist, I think Lady Gaga, did. They invited a medical expert from the US, and one of the things she said that I took was identify your emotion. Out of this state of grief, accept it. Which one are you in? Are you in a state of denial? Are you saying, for instance, that COVID-19 does not exist? Or are you saying the lockdown, most of the tweets that I read are in a state of denial?
Yes.
You know, some of them are anger. So identify that emotion and deal with it.
Okay, let's stop you there for want of time and bring in Assistant Inspector General Police retired Wilfred Inelego. How can the security agents manage the psychology of new normal, which of course COVID-19 has brought to bear globally?
And if you, in my last intervention, I talked about more engagement. And then for the officers enforcing this lockdown, in addition to the briefing they got before setting out to perform their job, that empathy, that spirit of empathy should be, inculcated. They should be told so that when they meet people on the road, some people, you could see somebody say, look, oh, my daughter is very ill, and I'm rushing to the hospital. It doesn't matter whether the person belongs to the exemption distance, but going to that hospital, show that empathy, and that could assuage the feeling of such an individual. So talking to them before you deploy them outside, that how to engage with the public, the SAR culture, as we call it in the police, the SAR culture, showing that courtesy, identify the emotion, like he rightly said, of that individual. That can help a lot. That can help a lot in...
All right. Thank you very much, retired AIG. Mohammed Ali in Kaduna, very briefly. Now, because we've talked about, the other guests also mentioned this, that there seems to have been a misreading of the potential threats that have now manifested in some of the occurrences that we have seen in parts of the country. Tell us something. What's your reading, and therefore what lessons can we learn? Kaduna was, as it were, several steps ahead of some of its neighbors, including Kano. And today we are seeing the numbers climb in Kano. In terms of law enforcement challenges, what is likely to occur? Nigerians will always pray that God forbid, but assuming there's an escalation in the numbers of any of the neighboring states, and then Kaduna decides to either relax or continue with its lockdown so that there is no influx, from any of these neighboring states, particularly in Kano, what is likely to occur?
We don't pray for the escalation, but so far the lockdown continues in Kaduna, with the exception of Tuesdays and Wednesdays, when people are slightly given the chance to go out and buy a few things they need in the house in terms of edibles. But I would want to sound some caution here. Quite a number of people are still living in a state of denial as far as the issue of COVID-19 is concerned. But while we still suggest that the lockdown continues, governments across board have to do the best they can to ensure that the palliatives being distributed gets actually to the vulnerable members of the larger society. Because hunger to some extent can be more dangerous to COVID-19. And I'm also afraid of a situation where people are actually pushed to the wall. They can decide to revolt. So for that reason, the issue of the distribution of palliatives have to be given a very proper attention. Because as I speak, some palliatives have been distributed across some states up here in the north. But unfortunately, some members of the groups or task force given the responsibility of sharing the palliatives to some extent is exhibiting a kind of authoritarian opportunism to such a point that people are complaining left, right, and center that the palliatives are not getting to them. So this has to be looked into seriously. Otherwise, we will not only end up fighting COVID-19, but we'll end up also fighting people who are out to demonstrate against hunger for being locked down, and there is nothing given at their disposal for them to live with. So this, I think, is important. We have to look at it. And so far, Kano has also clamped a lockdown. The same thing with Katsina. I'm yet to know what Zamfara is doing. Both.
All right, we have to pause you there because time is not on our side anymore for this particular edition of the program. We'll thank all our guests this morning who made it possible for us to, of course, get to our viewers with a robust conversation on the topic that we actually handled this morning. First of all, we'd like to appreciate Dr. Onai Homu, a security expert who joined us via Skype from Lagos. We didn't have time to ask you the last question. Well, of course, we're going to invite you as our coverage of COVID-19 continues on this platform. Thank you indeed for coming on the show today. And again, Muhammad Ali from Kaduna, we thank you indeed for your insightful contributions this morning. And Wilson Inalegu, Assistant Inspector General Police retired, it's also nice sharing your insights on the program today. And Dr. Kabiru Ademu, of course, is one of us here. I would like to appreciate you for coming, and of course, appreciate your contributions as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so that does it for us today on Good Morning Nigeria. Thank you for being with us. The program returns tomorrow, same time, 7 o'clock in the morning. Until then, don't forget, stay safe. I'm Kingsley Osadono.
And I'm Kirian Umayo. Have a good day and stay safe.